There we go. Okay, I think we got it going. Wonderful. As I mentioned to some, I've got on a few occasions that I've got some questions that I would like you all to participate in. So if you're in the far back, you might not hear well. So if you feel like sitting forward, the whole front row is open and there's several blank spots. But if you're comfortable in the back, hopefully you can hear well enough. What I'm going to present here is not maybe what you think of what the description is. I have to be honest, I did change a little bit from what was there, but all the same, I think it's going to really go down the path that will be of great value to you. Number one, I'm not suggesting libraries are going to disappear, but I am suggesting there will be change as we look at the long term. And I'm going to take an outside perspective. And in fact, I see myself as an outsider. I did not study library and information science. So I come to this discipline from the outside, and I think it's sometimes good to get an outside perspective and not trust your own instincts, and we're the inside, we know it. So let's take a look at some of these outsider things. Many of you are familiar with the issue of the ice maker back, in the late 1800s, how they delivered the ice to their houses every day and thought they had a job for life. And suddenly they lost their jobs because people went and bought refrigerators. And who were the best suited to take advantage of the new technology? They were. They knew it intimately. They were making the ice. They had refrigeration. Yet they didn't see it coming. And they lost their jobs. Quartz technology versus the mainsprings in watches. You know that story. They went to the Swiss first, these guys who developed the quartz technology, said, check this. And they said, no, this thing doesn't have a mainspring. And nobody makes mainsprings like the Swiss. No, not interested. So they said, okay. They went to Texas Instruments and Seiko, and the rest is history. The Swiss had to play catch up for years in this business. Look at newspapers. That's a happening thing right now. As you look at those of you with a few more decades under the belt, remember what a core part the newspaper played in our lives, and you look at it today, it's fading. It's definitely fading. Then people said, yeah, okay, the people get their news online. Classifieds. Ha, that is why they come and buy the paper. Well, have you heard of Craigslist? It's all going to the internet, and so the newspaper as such might exist in a smaller, in a reduced version, but its heyday is over. And so that brings us to a very important question. And this is the line that I want to really emphasize throughout this presentation. The moral is, change is constant. The anchor is in the purpose, not in the instantiation. That is something that you have to rub under your nose a lot to remind yourself of that. And do not see our instantiation of the service as this is it. And having that focus on the purpose. So, as I've said this, any disagreements, any agreements, just any feelings at this point as you look at just this opening volley into this discussion? Yes?
Hey, for those of us who are a little slower than others, what does the word instantiation mean?
Okay, instantiation, it is a legitimate word, by the way.
Oh, I totally believe you. I just don't know what it is.
An instantiation is a specific instance, is how you have actually then implemented it. And so your specific rendering is often seen as this is it. For example, to cut meat, someone might think, knife, nothing but a knife will cut it. Well, in theory, you can cut it with a laser. Not that we're going to go that way tomorrow. But you realize that what's your purpose is to separate two pieces of meat. And it's not knife-centric, whereas some people think the knife will always be it. We might be surprised down the road where knives are really not it anymore. I mean, this idea just came out of the blue, but that's the whole idea. Any other comments? Great. So, looking back at the Clinton era, remember that it's the economy, stupid. That focus, and in other words, Clinton rubbed it, under his opponent's nose that you don't get what matters, and that's why you're fighting hard but not winning. And so that notion of where the emphasis lies is what I want to lift from that. Now, a question, these are reflective questions to ourselves as practitioners in this field. Should we hold on to what works for us and what we think is best for our patrons? How do you feel about that question?
It's easier to think that way.
It's okay.
That's kind of what we know. We feel safer with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then we'll be.
But wait a minute, we are the experts, so why are we even doubting ourselves? Do you feel that there's merit there? Yes.
Well, I would say that what we think is best for our patrons is really the crux of that. There's lots of things that go into that, and unless we're constantly trying to find out better ways to serve those needs,
Mm-hmm.
and those needs are also constantly changing too. So we need to be on top of the different possibilities and understanding what those needs are. So right now we may think we know what the best is,
Mm-hmm.
but that may be different tomorrow.
Mhm.
And even though we're comfortable paying that, we're just fine. They're paying me,
Yeah.
so I'll just do it again next week.
Yeah.
Eventually, that builds in that stagnation, so that's dangerous.
And that's the question that I focus on, and that is, how relevant is our superior knowledge? And the reason why I ask that, it seems like, what do you mean, how relevant is our superior knowledge? We are the experts in the field. We should give, lead in this field. In the end, the only thing that matters is perception. I'll give you an interesting example. Did you see the AAA man out there today? Did any of you talk to him? Now, who of you did not know this? Okay, let me test the question of perception. AAA is an insurance company. Did you all know that? Okay. Did you know that they insure homes? Who of you thought of them as insuring homes? Or let me ask this: who of you thought, no, they were in automobiles and not in homes? Okay, that was my perception. And he said, yeah, we do a very good job of hiding that fact. So the point is, perception is everything. If you're into home insurance, you'll pass right by them. They might be the best priced, the absolute top-notch quality, rated the best. Doesn't matter. You didn't know that. But your perception drives you in a specific direction. And likewise here, our patrons drive it, not us. And their perception is what we're fighting for. And if we don't get their perception, well, okay, you're the smartest, go home. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's just, I'm insulted. But in the reality, in the end, if your patron does not get it, it doesn't matter what you think. That is the battle you've got to win. So now I want to take some reflections from reality that we've seen, and the fire is coming a little closer to home here. I remember distinctly, and I want to hear if any of you remember this, in the early 90s, I heard this many a time. Online education will never replace the teacher. And the fist on the table with it, and authority and all that behind it too. Now my question is, okay, as we look at this, here is another way to look at the same problem. What affordances are emerging from online education, and how can it be exploited to optimally promote learning? A very different, less hostile, and know-it-all by default approach, a curious approach, an interested approach to go into this environment. So the question is, where today is that teacher doom-saying online instruction? We all say we don't deal with that anymore. Okay, those guys had their time. We're now dealing with the second question, and that is how to exploit it properly for where we're going. So here's another one. I want to hear your feedback on this one. I wrote this myself, so it's not a quote, okay? But do you feel this is fair? Do you feel it's misrepresented? Do you feel, yep, it's on the money, so forth? Would you say this is good? The library is the heart and soul of information, of literature, in fact, of all recorded language and music. How do you feel? Give me your feedback of the role of the library related to this environment.
In a way, I feel robbed because the heart and soul of information of literature, it actually belongs to humanity. It doesn't belong to the library.
But wouldn't you say the library is where this is anchored, where the community comes for it? This is where where it's delivered.
It has been.
This is its role. That's where we come. Yes. Oh, we're getting real philosophical. See, isn't that interesting? You know, if you say the traditional library, if I were to say the traditional library, then all of a sudden you see, well, had you said this in 1970, people said, duh, of course. What do you mean? You know, and as time moves on, we suddenly realize it's maybe a very valid question. What do you mean by library? And how do you see the context of library? Very perceptive in approaching it that way. So here's the question that goes right there. Where is the nerve center today for information, literature, recorded language, and music? Where would you say is that nerve center? Okay, we see that shift. We see that shift. That does not mean the library's dead. It's moved on. But there's definitely some change here that we have to consider. So now I'm going to take a look. As you noticed in this previous one, I focused there on information, literature, and then recorded language and music. And so here, the transformation of those three areas, I want to take a look at each of those three, that you see how things are shaking out. First of all, information, we see the main thing is direct access. They used to come to you in the library for access to information, and you had that pivotal role as the information specialist. Oh, well, that field, actually, we've got a specialist specifically for that. May I introduce you to so-and-so? That's not my field. I deal with this. Whoa, okay, so you got several experts here, each in different fields. Man, this is amazing. I'm impressed. There's not just one guy knowing everything. The field is too large. You've got specializations in different silos, and I'm in down that silo. Okay, so that's where I go. So that is fading as you see direct access getting its way. So look at the pharmacist of 100 years ago. What happened when you went to the pharmacy 100 years ago? You gave the pharmacy your prescription, and what happened? What did the pharmacist do? Went into the back room, you heard the grinder, and it was cooked up right there. There was a cookbook. And your aspirin and whatever else, your stuff was made right there. Much of it was not just sent from the factory, but the pharmacist was a chemist and actually made your medicines. What is a pharmacist today? Only a gatekeeper to the pills. Does the pharmacist make anything anymore? Nope. It's all packaged just there, and I'm just the gatekeeper. And so it's a very different role that the pharmacist of today has. Yes?
Unless you have a big enough clientele and interested in a niche service. Because there is a compounding pharmacy in my community where people intentionally go to somebody who does use a compounding.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because who of you goes to such a pharmacist? Okay? The point is, 100 years ago, who of us would go there? All of us. What do you mean there's nothing else? Today, who goes? One. So it's there. It's not dead, but it's virtually dead. The trend is somewhere else. Maybe there's still a place today that makes those front loader guns with black powder guns, you know? Yep. But there was a day when that was it. And today it's a specialty and it's reduced. And that trend is the thing to see here and say, what replaced it and why?
And already for our cats and dogs, we can order their prescriptions online.
And look at now how suddenly the animal medicine world is suddenly coming. And we're still like surprised at that. You know, this arthritis medication for your dog and so forth. And that is a new era we face. So then look at libraries. Now just focusing on databases. Okay? Libraries back then, databases. Well, the library is the database. This is it. We've got our card catalog, and you find your stuff, and we hook you straight up with the actual product. So it's a living database made of paper. And we looked at how that changed as the digital era washed over us, that now we've become the gatekeeper to the database, which is hosted, and we just pay for the service. And so there is that similar trend in some ways to access. We just provide the access, but we don't have the stuff right there. A very interesting notion there. So then most of you are familiar, obviously, with the Open Journal movement, the Open Access Compact. As many of you know, Harvard, Berkeley, MIT, Cornell, Dartmouth started this, and that's still the beginnings of something exciting. But I see this as a wonderful future in access. That is because I personally greatly dislike the commercial thing. As an author myself, you worked hard at your work, and now you've got to beg them to take it. They do the peer review, and they say, yep, it's ours now. Go away. And they own it. And it disappears into your stuff, and 6 months later you want to get access to it, and you can't. I'm the author. Well, you need to pay for the subscription, sir. Then we can gladly provide you with it. And you see this trend, so I'm very happy that that counter thing is happening, and I'm really encouraged that open access, of course. A hand, yes?
It's interesting how you have also on the top of your slide transforming, and at the end this mentioning of the Open Journal movement, where libraries are very involved. So there come again, we are there.
That is
So we're not
much
there.
needed. Yeah.
We're just transforming.
Yeah, much needed. So let's look at literature. Now, initially when I started with literature, I thought, okay, you guys got me. The library still owns literature, definitely. And it is true, largely still. But we can see the opening volleys of something serious coming. And here we look at the Kindle, the Sony Reader, the Nook, and then I see the iPad definitely in that field. And who of you have seen anything on Blio? Have any of you seen anything on Blio? Well, I brought something for you to get a little look at Blio today. The difference is, obviously, these three at the top are exclusively, you buy the hardware product, this is what it is. The iPad is a multifaceted thing, but it also serves that. My prediction, and write it on the wall and take your photo by it, I'd say that the Kindle, the Sony Reader, and the Nook is a fad. It will be gone before we know it. As cool as it is, they cannot stuff enough coolness in it. It is framed to disappear, and I'll tell you why I say so. Now, I don't care if I'm wrong or right, but it'd be interesting to think back to 2-3 years and say, wow, yeah, did it happen or not? And this is what the Blio, I think, is setting the pace. I've seen this Kindle Sony Reader being Nook thing back in the 80s. I remember when the first little Apple Newton came out, that kind of screen, just a monochrome kind of screen. I went to a conference where this guy from Florida was selling these little readers. And it looked pretty cool, but he was kind of a quirky guy, and he wanted to control the world, and only he could do it, and he didn't know how to mesh with a network with bigger companies, and his thing never took off. But it was the same idea. So let me jump quickly, and so on this I'm going to go quickly to the Blio thing. Let me see. Oh my, that page closed up. Okay, no, it's there. Here we go. Okay. Okay, Steve Ballmer and friend presenting the Blio.
Now, how many people remember that feeling of going to the school bookstore for the first time and almost needing a forklift to carry your books home? Not anymore. Digital reading is taking off. There's lots of cool things out there. There's Kindle, there's Sony, there's Nook. All of this can be done on your PC. And I want to show you a new reader called Blio that really takes ebooks and reading on your PC to a whole new level. So, I've got my library up here, and
this is the Blio reader.
This is the Blio reader right here, and through the Blio bookstore, it has over 1 million books from top publishers that I can download. Now, I'm going to go ahead, click into my anatomy book right here. As I do that, you can see some really cool things. Here, you see a skull, but I can actually get real feedback right here, and I can play around in...
What are you doing, self-administering a test?
basically a little pop quiz without my professor grading it, so kind of nice. Not only that,
You've taken it a few times.
well, I've been
You're
practicing.
ready for this test?
A few times.
Good.
So, not only that, let me take you to this other part in the book. Here you can see I've actually highlighted inside my book, but for more advanced concepts, I simply go ahead, click play, and I'm watching video inside my textbook.
So we have both traditional text, books, and then newly authored, sort of advanced reading books, if you will.
That's right. And if I'm feeling a little bit lazy, well, I simply have my book read to me.
Okay.
All right.
So that's just a software, like iTunes.
Exactly. It's just a software. Now, those of you who were involved in this kind of business back in the 80s, remember hypertext and the old Mac stuff? It's coming back. That's really all it is, just with today's nice screens and so forth. It's basically that. So nothing really exciting in that sense. But the principle and the point that this brings out is you can now go through a digital book. You can have your movies in there. You can have interactivity in there. I want to stress this one point that I did not stress adequately in the movie or in this presentation, and that is you have we've seen ourselves often as, you know, the provisioners of information. We are the ones who can provide and give you access to information, and we're the experts to guide you and so forth. That slice of the pie is shrinking. There's a new emerging thing, and that is in the digital world, as you have interactivity and learning that blends with providing information. Becoming an expert in that field and in the information field, the learning and information, those two fields are blurring. And if you think, keep them away, you might survive in a smaller room. But you have to see that merging taking place and step back and think of how can you welcome that and create a whole new concept around this reality which is now unfolding to play a significant role in the new concept that's coming about. So we've seen now with obviously with movies and music, that's old hat to us, how that is direct and so forth. Movies and specifically music has done it well in that 99 cents song. It surprises me to that I see the book people still try to charge a top dollar and have exclusivity to it, instead of saying, wait, I can sell to a book to everyone in the room now, instead of you going to the library and check out the book and let it work its way through the room one by one. If I sell it for 99 cents to each one of you, you'll all buy one. If they can do that, that will be a real blow to the library. But if they stay knuckleheads and they keep the price up as much as possible, you got a job. So, so I mean, it's an interesting concept. There is that economics thing that plays a massive role. I went to a public library, for example. I was at a Richland Center. First time I heard of Richland Center, I thought it was a building. And then I found no, it's actually a town. Okay, went to UW Richland Center, and I was there at a conference, and on my off time I wandered through town and so forth, and walked into the public library there, and curious about what keeps this library, the pulse of this library going. And what do you think it was? Checking out of videos. That's it. That's what keeps them going, is that free video library is just what they need. And then you realize, oh, if the internet serves this community well enough, and with Netflix and all the rest, that might not be permanent, that they have their work cut out for them. Any impressions or feelings or thoughts thus far as we roll through this? And by the way, you can see down there where we are in our progression. Yes?
I know that I was still stuck on this whole pharmacy analogy. So are we because I go into the pharmacy and I do I'm kind of annoyed by the whole, everyone else is doing all the work, the support staff or whatever, and then I can't leave until I touch base with that all-knowing pharmacist who just says, do you have any questions? I say, no, I go. It's a little dance we play, right? Are we that pharmacist, or are we the one that's holding on to this message of you need to still first come through us? I don't know. I mean, again, I know that pharmacy analogy is not exactly this whole presentation, but I'm trying to figure what is the next step then? Are we moving on to something? What would that pharmacist have?
I've been wrestling with that question myself, and I don't necessarily have a better answer than what you are thinking of yourself, but I do realize there's a threat there, and I have seen it, and I think we've all seen that reality. I remember doing my master's in the early 90s, and the library was very important to me. I did my PhD, finished it 10 years later, and the library wasn't very important to me. Now, no librarian would want to hear that. That's really heresy to come with that kind of thinking. But the bottom of it all is, once again, coming back to the patron. What matters to me is my sense of adequacy in what I've found. You keep looking until you found, I think I've got it. And how do you determine that? Whatever's inside you to tell you that. Now you might say, but it isn't adequate. And if you were a professional like me, you know you should look further, la, and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, is when the patron says, I think I got it. That's it. That's it. That's when the buck stops. And we can say, okay, but we just need to train them that they need to come to us. Well, we've been doing that forever. So there is that reality that in the past, without the internet, they realized, I've got to come talk to you. Thank you for being here. You're my lifesaver. Today they look at you and say, just a minute. And you feel a little left out in many ways.
I was thinking of an analogy, maybe you thought you had enough, but I bet you it was really because your faculty advisory committee think you had enough. There was still another level, probably higher up, of somebody who was a bit more expert saying, yeah, you have enough.
Yeah, sure.
It wasn't a librarian.
Sure.
That's not really
And I fortunately passed that and still didn't hit the library. So, I mean, I'm not, it's not a negative comment, it's just a reality situation that you face, that less use is made of the traditional information seeking through the paper media. It is online, and you say, yeah, but you've got to come to our databases. Yep, and often now you can offer it to them if they're anywhere on campus, they can hop straight in, or even from home sometimes, and so forth. So they skip by you, and it's only on occasion that you find a desperate person coming to you. And whenever I've used the librarian services, I've always been impressed with really knowing their stuff, and I've always thought, dang, they do know their stuff really well. They do know under which rocks to go look, really nice. And I thought there are no scorpions here, but they found one for me. So yes.
So I'm personally struggling a little bit because what you're describing as the library is by and large the collections.
The bricks and mortar facility. Correct.
Right.
Correct.
But when you just said, now they bypass you and they just say, type on the computer. I mean, if we go back 30 years, librarians weren't saying, wow, we're so overwhelmed with patrons asking us questions. They were saying the same thing, which is people aren't asking us questions. So I'm having a little disconnect.
That's an interesting point.
When you're talking about the library and when you're talking about the librarian.
Because
If you go to the pharmacist, I think, and there we went from the pharmacy to
Yeah.
the pharmacist, and that's part of, I think, the disconnect of the metaphor.
interesting just now as you say that, I'm not disagreeing with you, but as you relate to the pharmacy, isn't it interesting that we can now buy our drugs straight from Canada? And you see, a similar trend even in the pharmacy business, where you had to go to the bricks and mortar facility. That even is not as rigid as it used to be. The point is, in the old days, you had the physical body there. You had the eyeball to eyeball experience. You had the proof of usage and so forth. And that is now more nebulous, as there's not as much need for the patron to come to you. And so you've got to see how your role now changes in this business. So obvious things that we do know, and that is the whole digital trend of no-cost replication, the affordableness of buying things at 99 cents a song and still making a real profit and so forth. That whole online environment. So here is a bit of an extreme view, but the notion is definitely there. I used to go to the reference center for an encyclopedia. Where do I go now? So, boom, that area's gone. I used to go to the reference section for really serious dictionaries. Where do I go now? Online. Boom. Phone books. I used to go to the reference section for a phone book of Chicago. Where do I go now? Online. Boom. So you see, okay, that area is definitely taken care of. You also see, when you look at the business, I mean, the publishing world. I was working at WordPerfect in the good old days, and I remember I learned all these interesting titles that people have, the paste-up artist, the this and the that, I mean, all kinds of things, the typesetter and so forth. All these people disappeared because of the automation of the process and the collapsing of it. And so you see in many businesses, from beginning to end, there's a lot of in-between steps that just are run over, and those people need to be redeployed and retrained because that's not needed anymore. So you need to step back and say, okay, is there anything like that in our business where we now can say, okay, we're moving more information and education together, but is there anything that's collapsing or not as needed anymore? Or do we hold on and say, it's so needed, the world will fall apart if this person is not here? Really? That's not a question I'm answering or trying to answer. But I think as insiders, it's a question you don't want to touch, because the loyalties, the community that you've built, the people that you love and work with, you have to look them in the face and say, some of us are really we need to shuffle, and so it's pain that you face. And so you just prefer to stick with the community because our loyalty is with our people. And yet the inevitable will face you eventually. And so it's time to look at retraining to maybe move people around.
Going back to your previous slide where nobody's coming to librarian for the encyclopedia, the dictionary.
Yeah.
The book. I work at a technical college. I have students all the time coming to me asking for help with the encyclopedia, the book one. They don't want to do the online. They're unfamiliar with the online. So I think there's still a very large population of people, at least in the area, we're seeing where I'm working, that
I give you credit there. I fully do, and I mean that very sincerely. Like with anything, nothing changes overnight. But I think if you step back and you don't say, I can find an example. For example, what's a typical American? There is no such thing. Any example you give me, I can give you a counterexample of a typical American that does not do that. And you say, oh, that didn't work. And so you'll be searching forever. So you have to step back and look at trends. And that's really what I'm identifying. In some populations, if I go to Africa right now, they only got the paper collection. And anything I'm saying here is like, what? They have no clue what I'm talking about. So we're talking about a specific context. And you're relating maybe to more of a population, blue-collar environment, not as into the internet, maybe, who knows. But there is definitely some needs in some areas. Yes?
I'm in library school now, and my experience in being involved is that people who are in the library field, or even just the students going into it, very young people who have this background in technology, don't want to give up on the idea that the library can and will change. And when they say it can and will change, they have this kind of pre-formulated idea of what the library could be like in the future, and they just don't want to imagine that it be different than the way they understand it. Like the role of the librarian might change, and that library is going to disappear. It's like it's not incomprehensible for them. And I think there's a danger there that because they're so caught up in kind of understanding the library in a certain way and what its role is supposed to be, that other organizations, like you say, are going to, people are going to return to the internet, and other private organizations are going to do the same thing the library does now.
Yeah.
And they're not going to change the role of the library to compensate for the needs that people actually want to do for the library.
There is naturally resistance to change. And as you've seen in several other instances where people did not want to go with change because nothing was broken with what we're doing. The mainsprings work very well. Our watches are prized all over the world. Switzerland's the king of the hill when it comes to making watches. I don't want to mess with this battery not driven nonsense. And eventually they had to succumb to that and realize that it is a different world. So I'm not pushing specifics in the library world, but I think we can clearly see there are definite changes here, and we have to start thinking very progressively, because that will ensure that we basically create our jobs for the future. Instead of the outside, if we don't think progressively, the outside will say, I just don't feel it works for me. And as that disconnect grows with you will always have those that you will serve. But as a bigger population feels it doesn't work for me, eventually you will get the surprise and people really push and things happen that you could have steered and managed better.
Now nobody wears a watch, they just use their cell phone.
Good point. Great point. Yeah. Actually beautiful. Isn't that amazing? That's exactly true. So, so as I mentioned, for example, with publishing will always be there. But when will you publish? Well, you have many more choices. But today you just put a PDF up on the web and point everybody to it, and they go get it there. And if they want to print it out themselves, they can. In the old days, let's print a copy for everyone. And so many more choices are there, and the reasons for publishing has shifted and changed. So I do say libraries will change. They will continue to exist, but the patronage issue, that shift, we'll have to work at to understand that environment. So here's a small little quote, maybe I don't know if you're in the back you can see this, I'll read this quickly. Printing innovation empowered those needing the printing service to do differently, and in the process collapsed a chain of workers. I already pointed to that. They knew they had to change, and the fact that it brought about reducing and making some jobs redundant did not stop them and say, oh, we cannot do it because where's John going to work if we go digital? You know, that did not stop them. They knew if we don't do it, others will, and so it's like a wave. It hits you and you realize sink or go with it. And that's important to preempt that wave so that you're very well prepared and that you don't have those issues in there. So now here's another interesting thing in this training thing that I mentioned. Librarians are training patrons in information literacy. There's plenty said on that. And in the process, we could be collapsing chain of workers because if I speak now as from the concept of the librarian as professional, is the ultimate in information literacy. This is the person that knows the field. But our job is, because of the direct access that people have, that they need to be the information literate person. And the more information literacy is out there, the more we make ourselves redundant. Yet we brought it upon ourselves, and that is in a way what we're meant to do. It is part of the thing, but this is now the question. Okay, so I've worked myself out of a job by training you, general people, to do it, that I'm not so useful anymore, or less of us are needed. Is that a reality or not?
Well, I'd like to draw an analogy to the health sector.
Okay.
Because the movement in healthcare is an informed patient aspect of outcomes. And I would propose that our patients need to become more literate.
Uh-huh.
And that doesn't mean that physicians are in any way redundant or that they're collapsing in numbers. In fact, it's the opposite. And I don't think that librarians, if they continue to change and adapt to the needs of their patrons, will be redundant or will be any less important.
Yeah.
In fact, more important. And if I use the health analogy again of health teams that are now prevalent in healthcare, where
Yeah.
pharmacists, doctors, nurses, information specialists work together to produce a better result. I would propose that librarians are now learning to do that, be members of teams with their faculty, with their students, with whatever entities they work.
I think that's an innovative idea. A very innovative idea is to form a consulting, core, and people know what they need, and those people are really good at finding that. But that has to be. I'm thinking of your medical practitioner situation. One interesting thing about that, I remember back in the early 90s, when the internet was still fairly new, my daughter had some red spots on her. It looked kind of like, bites of insects, but it was obviously not. Went online, I found the pictures of this exact little dermatological situation and the fancy name to it and exactly what's going on there. We got the information from the internet. We went to the doctor. The doctor looked at this and said, went into the back page through the book to find what this is, and found it, and came out. And as the doctor came out, did you confirm that it is X, Y, and Z? The doctor, how did you know? And I said, yeah, and this is the situation, and this is what you can do, and this is what you can't do. The doctor had no new news for me. But the doctor had the authority to give me the medication to put on this that I couldn't get myself. But as far as if it wasn't for the authority, we would have been on par in that specific situation. But I need the doctor, because without the doctor, I cannot treat the child. Now, when it's a murmur of the heart that I've confirmed, that drives me to the doctor in a hurry. And I need you, doctor, because of what you can do for me. But finding the information initially is now easier for me. Whereas before, you go in blind trust and you say, sick baby, help. Now you know way more of what's going on with your baby, and you're informed. So I don't know how. I think it will take a longer discussion to see, as you say, medical practitioners now even do better, that how it ties in with librarians, looking at it, piece by piece, to see if is that a fully legitimate argument that it will increase our job, or will it change it, or will it reduce it. I don't want to venture an answer at this point, but I do think it's important to loosen some rocks, that you can realize this is something we cannot just go on and practice what we've always practiced and just assume things will be the same. As the field changes, we need to preempt that to be able to jump into this. So I do say that information literacy education is a game changer. I think it's a very important service that we provide. I think it will be a mainstay that will stay with us. It's not, okay, we've trained them and now we can move on. I think this will be part of the library's future, is this training in the future. And I think that's part of the new shape that we need to be in. And so if you are a traditional librarian just working and information literacy is not your thing, I highly recommend, rub shoulders with these people, really get into it and become part of the debate. It goes beyond the library, of course. At UWM, we're looking now at making it part of our general education system. So that means more librarians, more people that are in information literacy education. But are they all librarians? Can we claim that it's all us? No. So we will form interesting partnerships in that. But the focus there is the game change that's happening. This is, to me, a classic that I found. Any of you have heard of the Abbott Downing Company? They were found roughly 1824, and they lasted for all of the 1800s to the early 1900s. They made 40 different types of carriages, sold their vehicles throughout South and North America, Australia, and Africa, and they were known for exceptional quality. Their stuff never broke. They just wore out. They were just phenomenal. That is the company that gave America the name of, they make good stuff out there. It was this Abbott Downing Company with these carriages that they made. Now guess what? They were the experts in making wheels. The best top-line wheels that were made in those days, they made them. Axles, steering, suspension, they knew the game. And then some other guy came and said, give me one of your carriages. Okay, I'm going to do a few changes. I'm going to plonk this funny little pop, internal combustion engine into your carriage, and we'll fit, make that I can change the thing instead of the horses. Okay, I've just got to rework this steering mechanism a bit, and there we went, and we had our first automobile. A very interesting thing, but I needed the carriage to build it. So now I ask myself, couldn't they have become the Ford or the Chevrolet, the UPS or the DHL or FedEx? There are many areas where they could have gone because they had it. They were the experts. People looked at them and they were the Rolls Royce of the carriage business. They didn't transfer. They didn't transfer. They had one lady who stitched all their leather seats. And they wouldn't get two because she was too good and they loved her. They had a very closed business. And then other people came and saw the potential in taking the carriage and now making it automobile and not horse-o-mobile. And there it went. And they just eventually said, okay, I guess our time's done. Let's close shop and go take a rest. And that's very sad. And so once again, another interesting example, the same thing, that when change comes down the pipe, that you don't see, wow, we're the experts. We can really deliver the future. And that's the choice when you're on the bridge. You say, are you going to go across it? Or you can say, nope, we stay this side, thank you. And you have to have that vision and daring to see how to shift to place yourself in the future. So the last slide is the question again. Will we accept the digital shift and shrink by staying close to what we know best? And you might still be very viable, smaller, but still very viable. It's not necessarily by shrinking, meaning you're useless or anything like that. You might still be very viable, but you just have a smaller clientele. Or will you morph with the inevitable transformation and become a new concept as that happens? And my final quote that I mentioned right in the beginning is, change is the constant. The anchor is in the purpose, not in the instantiation. Thank you. So give me some further comments as we wrap this up. Yes?
I think a real danger, especially within libraries now, is to be focused on our current set of patrons, and this is what they're coming to us for, and this is what they want. And they're not looking at a bigger picture about who are our potential patrons, and they might see a growing number of patrons who are doing a certain thing because that's what the library currently offers, and they're changing to meet their needs, rather than focusing, hey, we could bring in a lot more people if we offer a different kind of service or change in certain ways to facilitate the general population, which is much, much larger.
You know, I want to think of something that when I worked at WordPerfect, when I walked into this, is that good old days, some of you do remember WordPerfect when they were the choice word processor. When I walked into those buildings, there was a feel there that was so precious to me. You could tell that these people knew they were this. They knew that we are designing the cutting edge. People are looking to us to see what's coming. So there was a real sense of ownership of creating the future. Not just of keep tweaking things and suddenly they had real vision in where they went. But obviously they lost along the way because they didn't focus on Windows at the right time and the market shifted. But there was a time when you got that pure sense of vision that they had. A very powerful thing. And as I think of that, my sense is, I think it would be immeasurably valuable to any institution to say, let's get the forward thinkers together and invite anybody who wants to be part of that and go outside the library too and start and see how you can dynamically get people together to start the discussion. Not maybe it's already ongoing, obviously. It's not something that hasn't started yet. But to be actively engaged in this process to shape the future in this field instead of just inching ahead. But because I think that rigorous internal conversation and arguing with each other and differing and then going home and saying, hang on, I don't agree with him, but let me go think about it. And coming back tomorrow and then realize, okay, I'm going to give you an inch. But I wasn't willing to give you an inch yesterday, but now I've shifted. And then you say something and then he gives an inch. That process of milling around this is very important at this stage because things are changing so fast. We've seen so many changes already with media as you look at old records and then CDs came in and we thought, oh, this will be it because it doesn't scratch and wow, and lasts forever. And we thought, we've arrived. I'm going to go to my grave and CDs will still be it. And today you see, no, they're fading now. CDs are just not it anymore. It's all now, the old solid state players and they're shrinking and getting more, storage on a smaller piece and so the game is constantly moving. An old cloud concept of everything in the desktop. Now everything is in the cloud and you just work through it. And Google's coming out with those new cloud top-centric computers where basically you just work straight into the cloud. Your documents are there, your word processing is there and so forth, and Google Docs and that type of stuff. And many people are very comfortable with that setup. Yes?
I think what gets confusing is that we're talking products, items, commodities, tangible things, and I just looked at a study recently that said 8 out of 10 students are, so students now have access to more and more and more and more stuff, products, but they're getting, it's like an inverse relationship, they're getting less and less sophisticated in where they go, and so they have more and more tools at their disposal, more and more, items, but they're going to the same 2, 3 sources always, no matter what they're selling. So we're not selling carriages potentially needed. So I think we have to really think about not, are we gonna have books anymore? Are we gonna have CDs anymore? Are we gonna have these medical items?
Excellent
But what do
point.
we sell? We
Yeah.
don't sell an item, we sell a heck of a lot of help, so.
Service is your focus.
Right.
You're a
right.
service industry. You're not. You don't push books as many people would. But here the point comes. I fully agree with you. But if I step back into the patron's shoes, does the patron know that? In other words, does the patron see you as the lady giving me permission to take the book out of here? You know? So you're a commodity controller here. Or does the patron see you, I need you for information and that negotiation or the service that you provide? That's, as I mentioned in the beginning, is the real thing, is that perception that the patron approaches you with. Although you're right, it might not matter if the patron is not understanding that. Yes?
In terms of services, and we need to probably evolve into another service model. One thing that I strongly believe is that, you know, we may not know what that next bridge is that we need to cross. So I say, let's try and cross these different bridges and know that a bunch of them might fail, and that's cool. That's all right, you know. But as long as we're trying to provide, you know, those necessary services before we do become obsolete.
I absolutely want to emphasize what you just said. Go with the Edison model. And I said, yeah, I failed 99 times. Guess what happened the 100th time? Do you know what happened the 100th time? Boom, we have light. Rather, I think if you're not in that research mode, you say, you know, why fix what's not broken? And it's a totally different mindset. So let's not mess with it. And someone else says, we know it's going to change. So let's try and build bridges. I think it's healthy to go there to, as I say, to loosen the rocks, to get the juices flowing, and to get lots of thinking on this, because it takes often a lot of thinking to come to solutions. And I've seen
a lot of failure.
I've seen it so many times in life, you know, that I'm an assistant Boy Scout, Scoutmaster, and you give the boys a problem. You know exactly what steps it takes to find the solution. It's just now, some guys sit there for half an hour and little thinking happens. And other guys, man, they fight and wrestle with each other. No, like this. And it's just engaged. 5 minutes later, fixed. And it's like, well, here they put in that powder, sweat, furiously and fast. And the other guys, no, I don't know, you tell me. You know, and what it took, they didn't understand that they had to give it. And they're just thinking, if I just wait long enough, you're going to give it to me. And I didn't. And so I see the same thing in solving our problems. It takes energy and getting at it, not just assuming. It will just be solved if you just wait. It will be, but you might be on the outside of the solution. And instead of people saying, we are so glad you are here. People, please come listen to this person. And you are pulled in immediately. And now they gather around you because we know, yes, a thinker. Here's someone that can get to the top of the pile of rocks in 5 minutes, not half an hour. And this is valuable. Any other last comments? Great, thank you very much.
How's it going? Doing pretty good, actually.
Packard reorganizer.
I'm good, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it was nice to meet you.
Same there, thank you.
Well played, Jacques.
Yeah, thanks. All the technology worked out beautifully.
Great, good to hear. Exactly.
Okay, so then we need to get Rosie this.